A boy watches the street from his bedroom window. His mother promised she would pick him up for the weekend. Time ticks by. The sun goes down and no car arrives. Eventually, his father tells him she isn't coming. The boy's hope evaporates, and worse, he isn't even surprised. The New Testament book of James applies this exact logic to spirituality. A promise without any real action to back it up is completely dead. Modern culture often defines faith as simple intellectual agreement. We assume that if a person agrees with the right facts about God, they have true faith. But James points out an uncomfortable reality. Demonic forces possess perfect theological orthodoxy. They understand exactly who God is, and they shudder in fear, yet they remain entirely misaligned with his life-giving ways. James even connects this to the Shema, the ancient and central prayer declaring that God is one. Reciting that sacred truth is something even demons can do accurately. If the same level of belief and theological accuracy is found in demonic forces, it reveals that intellectual assent, on its own, does not constitute a living faith. Dead faith is incredibly hard to spot, because it rarely looks like villainy. Instead, it camouflages itself as standard religious devotion, or basic cultural common sense. James illustrates this with a familiar social dynamic, a dinner party. We have a natural human impulse to align ourselves with the wealthy and powerful, offering them the best seats while shoving the marginalized out of the way. Elevating a powerful celebrity over a working-class laborer directly contradicts a living faith. God views all people through an equalizing lens, and a faith rooted in his perspective forces us to disregard social status entirely. A second example cuts even closer to home. Imagine offering warm thoughts and prayers to a starving person, while actively withholding the actual food or clothing they need to survive. This scale illustrates the logic driving this behavior. We often view the world as a zero-sum game, assuming giving resources away jeopardizes our family's survival. So we hoard what we have, shrinking outward connections, rather than letting resources flow to build supportive community. Dead faith prioritizes self-preservation and social climbing over life-giving action. It makes perfect sense in our modern economy, acting as a completely normal yet entirely useless cultural reflex. To solve this paradox, James bypasses normal societal behavior entirely. He hyperlinks to two ancient stories that sit on the absolute extreme opposite ends of human society. This diagram maps out a literary device called a merism. A merism uses two extreme opposites to represent a whole. On one side, you have a wealthy, elite patriarch. On the far opposite side, a marginalized foreign sex worker. By placing them together, the text encompasses everyone in between. Let's look closely at the patriarch, Abraham. He experienced a serious failure of faith when he relied on the cultural norm of using an enslaved woman to secure his lineage. That decision caused intense, lasting harm to his household. Contrast that failure with his ultimate triumph. Abraham abandoned all conventional human logic when he trusted God with his promised son, Isaac, on the mountain. He chose obedience over his own cultural assumptions. On the opposite extreme, Rahab acted from the distant margins of society. As a Canaanite outsider, she risked her own execution to harbor enemy Israelite spies, trusting their God was the true authority. The common thread linking these two stories is surrender. Both the elite patriarch and the marginalized outsider had to completely abandon their cultural allegiances to partner with God. Living faith requires active rebellion against what the surrounding world considers safe. It asks us to risk our social standing to participate in God's plan. This split-screen logic tree highlights a tension in the New Testament. Paul claimed salvation is by faith alone, while James says faith requires works. On Paul's side, the target was exclusionary religious rules. He argued relationship with God is not restored by keeping works of the law, cultural boundary markers like circumcision, but by faith. On James' side, the target was lazy, passive intellect. He argued a belief system is useless unless filled by active love. Viewed together, both perspectives converge into a single requirement, a total reorientation of life. Paul tears down religious barriers to inclusion, while James tears down passive hypocrisy. Both describe a transformation that changes how a person exists in the world. This brings us back to the child waiting for his mother's car. Living faith involves a willful departure from the status quo, an alignment of belief and action that mirrors a kept promise. The text leaves us with a necessary audit of our own lives. Are your actions actively bringing peace and order to your neighbors? Or is your faith simply another hollow,